Here's a little video on how I make my recycled glass slugs. So I start with scraps of yellow stained glass, opaque yellow, and I melt the little pieces together on a kiln board. And that gives me the opportunity to add extra color decorations on some of the pieces. So the slugs don't take that long to make actually. They only take a few seconds to pour and another minute or so to pull out the eyes. But the preparation takes quite a while. I have to fuse all these pieces together ahead of time, and they need to be of a significant enough volume so that I can find them in the furnace after they're melted. So they need to be at least an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter in diameter. And then I can add sprinkles to some of them, which are chips of darker colored glass. I prefer a green glass that has aventurine sparkles in it. That's the one I use the most. And then these go in a kiln to melt them, to stick them all together. Wow, there's some crazy stuff going on here. Only an area about the size of a quarter winds up in the slug, but these are bigger than that because I need to aim for them when I gather them out of the furnace with the ladle. And my aim's been getting better over the years, but still sometimes I don't gather them in the right location. And here's the mold here. I made it in 1997. And it's 2026, 29 years ago. Wow. It even has a breathing hole on it, just like the slugs have. And I have to fill the furnace gradually with my recycled glass. The furnace holds close to 200 pounds. Yeah, the furnace needs constant feeding. It takes several hours to fill it all up and stir it and get the glass conditioned and ready. Here at the Glass Foundry on Salt Spring Island, I've remelted over 250,000 pounds of scrap glass in this super energy efficient furnace which I designed and built in the year 2000. Since then, through a series of instructional videos, these are in use now in countries all over the world. And I'll throw some green in there too. I remelt all my old broken stuff and leftover bits. There's no waste. Now I gotta stir in that green. So here's my pieces here with the design facing up. So I put them face down in the ladle so that when I plop this off into the glass pot, the design is facing up. I'm going to do this repeated wave action over and over. There, nice one. So the hardest part about making these things is putting on the eyes. It's really hard to put the second eye on without melting the first eye. So I get the glass nice and hot right in the region of the eye, and then I start pushing at it and working it a little bit to get a whole bunch of glass on the end of my wire poker there. And then after I've got enough glass from a fairly wide surface area, then I can pull it down and use the torch to burn it off. There, perfect. Now the other eye. I have to have the torch set perfectly with the flame quality so that I don't burn off my yellow coloring. There. The second eyes are always harder. Just nudge it over a bit. They look more interesting if the eyes are spread a little bit. It makes them look a little bit more curious. This is what I call the drizzle pour, but I lift the ladle up really high. There, that's the result of pouring from a great height. The glass drizzles in and makes lots of folds with the color. Amazing. Alright, so people have asked me how I came up with the slug idea, and years ago, like I'd say about 1997, I was at a craft show and the guy at the table next to me was a silversmith, and we were coming up with different names for the different kinds of people that were coming through the show. And early in the morning, people were coming through with their fanny packs, and it was like they were speed walking. They were just rushing through. And then after lunch came a crowd that just moseyed along and took their time and spent way too much time at every table. And so we called them the Slugs. So I had some plasticine with me for working on in my spare time. And I made a slug and showed it to him, and he laughed and said, "You should make those in glass." So that's how it happened. And so the iconic West Coast rainforest slugs were born. So let's have a look here. When those melted spots that I fused into the yellow glass are placed in the furnace face up, when I pick them up in the ladle and pour them out, I am able to retain their location in most cases. So here's an example here of what that would have produced. It's a piece of the yellow glass with little spots on, and the spots are then transferred over onto the slug as I pour the remaining green glass to fill up the mold. So there's lots of pattern variation depending on the pouring stream and how it's positioned into the mold in those few seconds it takes to pour these. Each one's totally different, but there are some similarities. Here's a look at the pouring stream that goes straight from the head of the slug down to the tail with no overlaps. Straight down. And the curves in here is the side of the ladle that the glass stream starts to pour out of before it straightens out. That's what causes that little round curve. And there's the bent over version of the same pouring style. And here's the pouring style where I'm lifting the ladle up very high after plopping the head in there and letting it fill with a overlapping curl of a stream all the way down. So as it overlaps and fills, I get a bit of a repeating pattern, but there's still a little bit of randomness to it. And with these ones, I raise the ladle up and back down again as I'm filling. I get a little bit of a fold in the glass, which produces a location for the color. Here's the bent version of that one here. So, where can you get them? I used to sell them in galleries and gift shops for almost 3 decades, but I only sell them in my own Glass Foundry studio gallery now on Salt Spring Island. Or they can be ordered from my US distributor,